it is true that Islamophobia is growing, and it is growing fast, especially in the Netherlands, but all over Europe. I think there are two reasons for this Islamophobia. The first reason is that we are not always giving the right example in our own behavior. If you look to the situation in Iraq, Syria, for example, Daesh, of course. And the other thing is, and that is even more important, is that the Islam is the fastest growing religion in the Netherlands, in fact all over Europe. And that was never meant to be. The first generation of immigrants that arrived like 30, 40 years ago, for example in the Netherlands, they were not very educated. They sometimes couldn't even read or write, and they worked in the factories, and they were not supposed to stay, and they were supposed to leave within a few years, going home. But they stayed, and their children also stayed. And they became like the new generation became teachers and lawyers, and they were more educated, and they even know their rights. They are starting to vote, and they are having an influence in society. Now the third generation will probably become decision makers. So Islam is not only growing in numbers, but it's also growing in influence. And that was something that was never supposed to happen. And now the thing is that media, the government, they feel threatened by the Muslim community because their values, for example, banks and other financial institutions, they work with interest. Now Islamic banking is starting to grow. There are also Islamic mortgaging. That's also something that is starting to happen. So Islam is growing, their influence is growing. Muslims are voting, they are establishing their own political parties, they are establishing their own labor unions, for example. So I think people they feel threatened by Islam, because Islam now is a substantial amount of the population and still growing.